But I'm going to give you something really impressive now, and I'm going to pay kudos to the Weekly Dartscast because they highlighted this as soon as Peter won last week. Peter has won for 13 straight seasons on the PDC Tour. That is astounding.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. I'm Alex Moss, and alongside me as always my co-host is the darts statistician, the darts driver king, Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I am doing superbly. It is sexy September. so superbly. I'm out of other S words, but how are you, Alex?
I'm glad you're doing superbly. Yeah, I'm doing well here, thank you. Just about got over my first round defeat in my latest darts competition at the weekend. No quarterfinal heroics for me to brag about this week, so I need to get back on the practice board. But before I do that, lots to discuss following what's been another busy weekend in the world of darts. We're going to be talking about the Euro Tour in a moment, the Women's Series as well. Plus, we're going to be looking ahead to the World Series of Darts Finals, which is coming up this weekend. The return of the Weekly Dartscast Parlay with our sponsors, Kwiff. But before all of that, let's start with events in Antwerp over the weekend. The Flanders Darts Trophy, and it was won by Dave Chisnall. Chizzy bagging his 8th career Euro Tour title, joins a very short list of 4 players to have won that many Euro Tours. He's up to number 6 in the world, closing in on the top 5 again. Is a major next for the professor.
Can I just say I don't know? Is that an acceptable answer, an acceptable amount of detail and explanation?
Be a very short show if it is.
we could do that one week just to mess with our guests. Our listeners. Yeah, but the truth is I don't know, because if we go back, what was it now? 14 months ago, ahead of the World Match Play in 2023, I tipped Chizzy to win it. And I tipped Chizzy to win one of the other majors last year. And I tipped him to make a deep run in the World Match Play this year. And all the signs point to it being Chizzy's time, or Chizzy's time being near. Because he has been, for the last 18 months or so, at least at times, the best player he's ever been. He's won 6 Euro Tours in under 24 months. He had only won 2 before that. He's now won 2 of the last 3 and made the semifinals of the other one. But when it comes to the big televised events, since making the finals of the Masters at the beginning of 2022, he's done next to nothing. He's only made 2 quarterfinals in 2.5 years on the big televised events. One of those was the World Championships at the beginning of the year. And, well, if you're going to have a deep run in a major, no better one than the World Championships. But that's it. The other one being the Masters this year, another non-ranking event where he only had to win the solitary match to make it to the quarterfinals. And, again, went out without much of a fight in the quarterfinals there, just like he did to Luke Humphries in the World Championships. So he's not taken that game. It's not just a floor game, but it's a game that he's shown that he has on the European Tour stage, which they are now televised events in many countries. He's not been able to take it onto the big televised stage. And there's been nothing in his recent performances in the big televised events that make me think that big major breakthrough is right around the corner. You go back. I picked him to have a deep run at the World Match Play, but he went out with the worst performance of anyone in the field, averaging barely 85 and getting blitzed by a not quite in great form Christoph Ratajski in the first round. I want to say the answer is yes. The heart, and we were talking about it before we started recording, about sometimes you go heart over head with some of your picks. The heart wants to say yes, because when Chizzy's playing well, he is a joy to behold. Go back now almost 4 years ago to when he beat Michael van Gerwen 5-0 in the World Championship quarterfinal. One of the most thorough beatdowns the Green Machine has ever had. It was at the hands of Dave Chisnall, who came into that match on a double-digit losing streak against Michael van Gerwen, who had never beaten him in a truly meaningful match before that, and he wiped the Ali Pali stage floor with him. But more often than not, when the going gets tough in the big televised events, Dave Chisnall's just not there. He just doesn't seem to have that gear to fight off adversity and fight his way back into matches. If he falls behind on the big televised stage, that's usually been the end of him. There are a few exceptions, but mostly that's the case. And that's worrying. He needs to be able to take that grit, that fighting spirit that he has in the Euro Tour, like he had in the final against Ricardo Pietreczko from 4-3 down, to put in some of his best legs to get back in that match. He has to have that consistency where he averaged over a ton in 3 of his 5 matches, and the other 2 he was over 95. That's what he did in Antwerp en route to the title. He needs to be able to do that on the big televised stage for the answer to be yes. And there's just been too many times where he's come in this form and the answer ended up being no, he couldn't. That said, he's coming in hot to the point of the year where all the majors pretty much are. We have, in the space of 6 weeks, starting this week, with the World Series of Darts finals, we have that. We have the World's Grand Prix, the Euros, the Grand Slam, and the Players' Championship finals. 5 televised events, 4 ranking in the space of 6 weeks. If you're going to catch fire at any given time, it's now, because you have multiple opportunities. But I want to say yes. But there's just no reason for me to say yes. He's proven me wrong too many times so far. So I'm going to say I don't know, because I don't want to say no. I don't want to be wrong, because the truth is I don't know. And that's my final answer.
Fair enough. Well, we've done a slight variation with our question of the week, which is sponsored by Condor Darts. We've asked our listeners, will Dave Chisnall win a major before the end of this season? And you mentioned all those TV events coming up. I think we've got 6, including the World Championship, before the end of the season. Well, 16% of our listeners are going with yes. 84% of our listeners are going with no. And yeah, we have been here so many times before, haven't we? You could say maybe we've been here 24, 25 times before, because that title at the weekend for Dave Chisnall is 25th in the PDC. And I mentioned when we introduced this question how he's gone on to 8 Euro Tour titles now, a figure that only 3 other players can match or better. And those 3 are Michael van Gerwen, Gerwyn Price and Peter Wright. And all 3 of those players, multi-time major winners, former world champions, world number 1. So when you put those 4 players together, you add Dave Chisnall to that mix now. What do those 3 possess that Dave Chisnall doesn't, I guess, is the question we should be asking. And we can look at the other 3 players, look at their career trajectories, their career paths, and they've all gone slightly different, haven't they? They've not all gone the same. You've got Michael van Gerwen, who was a teenage prodigy in the same mould as Luke Littler, won the World Masters at 17, come over to the PDC, had his down period before he had that big breakthrough in 2012, won his first major in the PDC. The floodgates opened after that. Gerwyn Price, if you didn't know, he was a rugby player before he got into the darts. This is his second foray into the sporting world. And again, he's had a steady curve upwards. He's come through Q School. He got to his first major final, started winning titles, and then become a world champion. And he was a serial winner for a little while, the best in the world for a little while as well. And then Peter Wright, again, a different path, qualified for Lakeside in the 90s, wouldn't qualify for another world championship for the best part of 15 years after that. And again, he's had some ups and downs, and a bit like Dave Chisnall, really. He's probably the most similar, where he's had all those major final defeats before he did eventually get over the line. So, and I think we've said it before on the show when discussing Dave Chisnall, is Peter Wright is someone that he can look at for inspiration, that's lost all those major finals, but eventually overcome that hurdle. And I know there's a little bit of an age gap. Peter Wright is about 10, 11 years older, but I think he is someone that he can look at and go, that's someone I can follow in their footsteps. And when I next get to that next major final, that is going to be the one to get me over the line. But just finally, 25 titles in the PDC, even without a major on that resume, is still a very impressive haul. And particularly, as you mentioned, you look at how many Euro Tours he's won in the last 2 years, 6 in the last 2 years. It's very impressive. And I think in that same time, you look at the TV events, 3 quarterfinals, 7 first round exits. That's an area of Dave Chisnall's game that he really needs to address over these coming months, because he is going to get a lot of opportunities to right those wrongs from the past and get that first major. But you say you don't know. I'm in a similar boat. I think we've been stung so many times before when we've backed Chizzy and thought it is going to be his time. But you know what? I'm going to do it one more time. This is going to be Chizzy's time. He is going to get that first major before the end of the year. So yeah, it's more in hope than expectation, but I think it's going to happen.
Well, you may turn out to be right, but we have to wait for that. We already know I'm right because I don't know about anything usually. This is just one of the rare times I've admitted it. But what I do know is that Ricardo Pietreczko just reached his second Euro Tour final off the heels of his maiden title a little over a year ago now, or a little under a year ago, I should say. How surprising was this run from Pikachu, and what can it do for the rest of his season now?
Yeah, it was very surprising. And we were talking last week about Peter Wright's run to the title when Hilda Simon, to quote Stuart Pike, where did that come from? It was the same with Ricardo Pietreczko this past weekend in Antwerp, wasn't it? It was a run that very few people were predicting at the start of the tournament. And Pikachu, it felt like his career progression, it had stalled somewhat this year after what was a breakthrough 2023. You mentioned that Euro Tour he won last year. He had some impressive showings in some of the TB events, the European Championships. I remember just a few weeks after that, he knocked out who was then the defending champion, Ross Smith, in the first round, pushed Michael van Gogh in close, and had a few setbacks after that. You look at the Grand Slam, the game with Beau Greaves when the crowd got to him, but bounced back with some good performances at the Worlds. Then he had another setback, losing to Luke Humphries, 3-1 up in sets, and being so close to knocking out the player who would eventually go on to become a world champion. But again, the powers of recovery, a semi-final in the first Euro Tour this year, and although it ended in a little bit of controversy, there was a few words exchanged with Luke Littler after he lost to that semi-final. But I think the aftermath of that game, it did seem to put Ricardo back a few steps, and he did still qualify for the World Match Play, the first time we've seen him in Blackpool, but he went into that event with the lowest seasonal average of the 32 players by quite a few points as well. And everyone was expecting him to lose heavily to Luke Humphries in the first round, and the scoreline 10-4. It does look like it was a one-sided game, but Pietreczko averaged a ton, Humphries 108. So in a strange way, he probably could take some positives from that game. And maybe after that, we were thinking that is going to be maybe something that he can use as a springboard to push on again. And the next few events, he kind of went backwards again. So to reel off 4 wins like he did, 99, 102, 93, 104 averages, and I think it was a 96 in the final as well. And to beat the calibre of players that he's beaten there, the likes of Danny Noppert, rejuvenated Dirk van Dijvenbode, he's got that first win over Luke Humphries as well. And to come within 2 legs of the title as well, yeah, for me, it is a real surprise. And if he had won the title, it would have put Ricardo Pietreczko in the Grand Slam, you'd think. But aside from the Grand Slam, the final, it's going to boost his chances of being a seed for Ali Pali. But the thing I'm looking at really the most for Ricardo Pietreczko from this run is the Pro Tour order of merit, because all year he's been in that top 16 seeds. He's been having the bye straight through to the second round. He has got that 30 grand dropping off his Pro Tour ranking coming up from that Euro Tour win last year. So this money that he's won at the weekend, that is going to be a bit of a boost for him. He is going to need to do a lot more over the coming months to keep that top 16 spot, because once that drops off, he could drop down towards the 32 range. So yeah, I think it could be a big move for him getting that final, but I think we're going to have to see over the next few months, the next few Euro Tours, Players' Championships, if he can build on it. And if he can, then we could see him stay in that top 16 and still be in the seeds next year.
This is another one that, I don't know would be a fair answer. And you made a very good point there. There were some signs that maybe things were coming back, the big one being that performance against Luke Humphries at the World Match Play. But there have been a few good performances this year sprinkled in with a lot of dreck. And a lot of those good performances had come on the big stage, many in losing efforts. Early in the year, he averaged nearly a ton, but couldn't get over the line against the then nearly unstoppable, at least in the earlier stages of tournaments, Richie Edhouse on the European Tour. And he had a few other top performances, but just as often, he was abysmal. And that's not an exaggeration. Before the last 3 Euro Tours, he had played 12 matches on the Euro Tour, which included that semifinal that you mentioned at the first one. And in 6 of those 12 matches, he averaged below a 90, sometimes significantly below. And 2 of the other 6 matches were literally between 90 and 91. So you can say 8 out of 12 Euro Tour matches before the last few Euro Tours were 91 or below in his average. And he's 114th so far this year in the Players' Championships with an average under 88. 12 of his last 13 matches over the last few Players' Championship events were below a 90. He's not coming in good form, that one match of the World Match Play aside. But there were also some signs in those last 3 Euro Tours. I mentioned that was just for the first 7, where half his matches were below a 90 and 2/3 were below a 91. He's started to play a little bit better on the big stage, and that World Match Play performance can be lumped in with that. But even still, nothing made us think that this is the game he was going to be at. Because Ricardo Pietreczko, he wasn't the best player all weekend. I think you have to say it was Dave Chisnall. But Ricardo Pietreczko was the second best player all weekend, averaging over a ton twice, including nearly 105 against Luke Humphreys, nearly averaging the ton against Andrew Gilding, a player he had never beaten before that match. In, I think it was 5 previous matchups. And his other 2 matches, they were lower, but it was still mid to high 90s, near 93.5 against a resurgent Dirk van Dijvenbode, who, I want to mention, he may have been making a fool of me after I said last March, after he blew the match against Curran Price, that a first big stage title was just around the corner. Injury pushed that off, and then he lost some form even after he got out of the injury. But Dirk van Dijvenbode is moving back to making me look less of a fool, because it's starting to look like that will again happen. That will finally happen for him at some point in the future. And that was, though, Ricardo Pietreczko's worst match. And then 97 in the final against Dave Chisnall, and was a back and forth affair where he just seemed to be a little bit off his game in the second half of the match, and Chizzy took advantage of that. This obviously does him wonders. You talked about how it keeps him, if not in the top 16 of the Pro Tour Order of Merit, once the money from 12 months ago drops off, still in that top 32. And that'll be key, because he's going to need to remain in the top 32 to push on to getting back to the World Match Play next year. There's no reason to think he was going to be back in it next year before this past weekend. But suddenly, he's right there. He's now in one of those provisional spots. Yes, there's a long way to go, but he was nowhere near it before that. And he's now guaranteed his spot pretty much in the European Championships. He still has work to do to get to Minehead. He's going to need to, the exact opposite of Chizzy, is going to need to bring that television and stage form to the Players' Championship events if he's going to get to Minehead for the Players' Championship finals. And he's going to need to just keep on playing like that to reestablish himself as one of the up-and-coming players that we thought he was after winning that Euro Tour last year. But this is obviously going to give him confidence, and it's going to give him something to build on. And it's going to ease a lot of the pressure that I'm sure he would have otherwise been feeling with that big chunk of change about to drop off the Pro Tour Order of Merit. This makes life a lot easier for him, and it gives him confidence. You really can't complain about that if you're Pikachu.
Well, from one player who came very close to winning a Euro Tour title at the weekend to one player who did pick up a title just a couple of weeks ago, is our chat with the recent Euro Tour winner in Germany. He is a 2-time world champion. Here's our chat with Peter Wright. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the newly crowned 9-time European Tour winner and the 2-time champion of the world, Peter Wright. Thanks for the time again, Peter. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. Thanks. Thanks for having me on there. And let's see what questions I can answer for you.
Good man. Well, we're talking just a few days before the World Series finals. You're going into it in some great form from the Euro Tour the last couple of weekends. How are you feeling ahead of making that trip to Amsterdam this weekend?
Yeah, obviously feeling a lot better in myself, playing darts-wise, and I feel like I can give people games instead of just like being a walkover. And I don't know what you'd call it. It'd be just like I don't know. You'd get a lead on someone and then just throw it away and don't know why. But yeah, anyway, it's all turned around. My mojo back. It's not quite there, but it's come back in the right time. Busy season.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that. We'll come on to those Euro Tours a bit later, but your first round opponent on Saturday, someone that you know very well, Dave Chisnall. You've had some games with him recently. An exciting matchup for us to watch in the first round. How do you feel about it?
Hopefully, like our last couple of matches, he managed to beat him 6-5 the other day, but I beat him I think, was it 7-5 the week before? So yeah, hopefully it'll be nice and close for whoever's watching, and hopefully I'll come out on top.
And this is the 10th World Series finals. You've made the final a couple of times. I remember watching those games with Michael van Gerwen when it was held in Glasgow and you were still hunting your first TV title. You've won quite a few since then, but what would it mean to tick this one off the list this weekend?
Yeah, that'd be great. Obviously, I've approached this not playing in great form, really, in the past couple of years. So, you know, as I said, the form's in there, but you've got players, obviously, in form, obviously, like Chizzy and Luke Littler and Luke Humphries, and obviously, we don't know how Michael Smith is after his little holiday, but he's been playing some good darts as well. So, yeah, it'd be a tough competition, but, you know, quietly, I fancy my chances.
And the finals, it's been in Amsterdam for a few years now. It's going to be my first time visiting the Netherlands this weekend. So what can I expect from the Dutch darts fans, and what are some of your favourite things about visiting the Netherlands?
I don't like none of it, really. Not really. No, it's just pretty much like East Anglia, pretty flat. Lots of water everywhere. Yeah. And obviously the fans love their darts, and you know, just look at them when they turn up at the Premier Leagues, and they sell out pretty quick. So, and you know, past few years, the crowd's been fantastic. So, and yeah, you'll enjoy it.
Glad to hear. Well, there's lots to catch up on since we last had you on the show. I looked back earlier, just before the World Match Play 2022, and you made an appearance on another top programme that week, Sunday Brunch. The hosts, I think they asked you to hit a 180 with your first 3 darts. They weren't asking for much, were they?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, as I said to them, you know, it's like you're normally there for about 3 hours before, and I think to get yourself ready in the practice, but you don't normally start at, that time in the morning.
Well, the last few years, it's fair to say you've had some ups and downs, Peter. Let's start with some of the ups, winning titles on the World Series, the Euro Tour. You also added another major to your collection, the European Championship last October. After that win, did you feel like you were back, and did you expect to kick on after that?
I felt pretty confident in the Worlds. And then obviously, because I must have been ill or something, because I missed the Players' Championships, didn't I? Or did I just miss that for not going to many floor tournaments? Might have been one of them. But yeah, the form past couple of years has been absolute diabolical, compared to the standard that I should be playing out, and, how I think I should be playing. Yeah, I know I'm 54, but I still believe, I think I've got the game to upset, the top guys at the moment. And if I put my mind to it, I can do it. Obviously, I'm not like all these, I go to all these tournaments and expect to win. It's, but as I say, if I put focus on a tournament, and then hopefully I'll win it.
Well, you mentioned the World Championships. After you went out early, it was probably the first time in a long time people were wondering if you would be in the Premier League this year. Were you a little nervous waiting for that phone call to say that you were going to be in?
To be honest, I didn't think I really deserved it. But I think Luke Humphries helped me out by winning near enough everything. So I was the only other person to win a major. So apart, So I blame him that I got picked.
Well, you mentioned Luke Humphries, another Luke we've seen emerge at the World Championship. Luke Littler, 16 years old, making the final on his debut. I'm curious, what were you doing darts-wise at 16? Were you playing in any leagues or tournaments, or just playing for fun at home?
I was playing in London, Super League, just signed county for London County. Yeah, I was playing darts. I was probably, you could ask George Noble, I was probably one of the best players in London at the time, around about 16. And that's it. And I got the same sort of attitude that he's got. He don't care. He just wants to go out and rip everyone's head off.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that. Well, Luke, he's brought in a new legion of fans, more interest in the game, which is obviously great to see. But a lot of these new fans, they'll have seen you in the Premier League this year struggling and probably not know what you've achieved in the past. Did you almost feel like you've got to prove yourself again to these new fans that are watching now?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, but I can understand. He's fast. He's quick. He just whizzes around the ball. He's got the long points, so it looks like when he bangs them in the treble, there's still loads of room. So it looks so perfect. And but yeah, I can still prove them all wrong and get some of them on my side.
We know proving people wrong, that's been a big motivation for you throughout your career, but has there been any time over these last, 18 months where you have considered calling it a day, or has that belief always stayed inside that the better times would come back?
I've always believed it come back. Form is temporary, skill is permanent, isn't it? Or is it the other way around, isn't it? Class is permanent, and then you know what I meant. But yeah, so yeah, I knew it'd come back. It's just it's just trying silly stuff like different footwear, so your different heights, and trying trying different darts and different weights. With a setup now, I'm liking at the moment, but I might go off on them. I probably will do and find something else. But my main challenge is to win the World Championships with these darts, because they're totally different shape of the other two World Championships darts. So hopefully I can win with them.
We shall see. Well, let's get on to that win on the Euro Tour a couple of weekends ago now. The 108 average against Van Gogh in the quarterfinals, 4-2 down. We saw afterwards you get emotional on stage. You said, I'm on my way back. How much belief did that win on its own and how you performed in that game give you?
Yeah, it was just like, obviously, because I think the emotion, just because the crowd were getting, they were singing, and it inspired me, They don't want me to fade away and play rubbish and stuff like that. So it was just like, I think that was on my third 100 average this year. So it was good to be part in a game and that I actually played okay and give Michael Van Gogh a good game as well as, because he's not really in bad form. He's got to the final of the match play, should have won that, and his averages, he's near enough back to the old Michael Van Gogh. So, to compete with him, what I've been through, that's why I got upset. And then just got on the practice board in the back room and got ready. Right, let's win the next game and see if I can, get in the final and go one step beyond and actually go and win it. And I did. So held it all together eventually.
Yeah, that final against Luke Littler, 3-0, 5-2 down. You then run off 6 straight legs to beat him, and when you were 6-5 up, we could see that the crowd were fully behind you. You were trying to hold yourself together. It's a feeling that you've probably experienced many times before, but just describe what those, 10, 15 minutes were like when you were running off those legs and winning the title.
It was just if I thought, wow, when he kicked off, the first half of the match, I go, wow, he's hitting everything without any effort at all. It was, it was unbelievable just watching him. And I thought, right, I'll just keep with you, find my throw, and you give me a chance, I'll take it. And then I'll settle, and then my scoring will come into the match, and then, which it did, obviously he missed a few doubles as well. He could have gone on and won the match, but he didn't have a match dart or anything like that. So, he's great for the game, but I believed I could just run off the legs against him or anybody in the world, to be honest. So, yeah.
Yeah, it turned out well, and as I mentioned at the start, that was your 9th career Euro Tour title, your first one, 2014. I was looking at some of the names you beat that weekend: Justin Pipe, Andy Hamilton, Kevin Painter. 10 years on, you're still winning these titles. What does that mean to you?
It's just nice to keep on winning, especially with the amount of talent we got around at the moment. You know, it's crazy. It's just like one person running away with it all. But it is in titles, as in majors. Yeah, Luke Humphries are running away with everything at the moment. But other tournaments, you know, he's not winning them all. He's not doing a Phil Taylor or, you know, like Michael Van Gerwen did. He's got to do it for a couple of years now. That would be nice if he can. But as I say, but to win another European ninth one, that'd be great. But I think by the end of the year, I'll have another one to make it 10. The way the form is, obviously need a bit of luck, but you got to make your luck as well.
Definitely. Well, we've got a few questions that have come from our listeners, and then we'll let you go. And the first one comes from Dutch Mantis, who says, "Only thing I want to know is if the snakes on his head are tattooed now."
Yes, they're tattooed. I've had other people say that. Is that a transfer? Yeah, they're tattooed now. Just before I went to Australia, just before that pro tour, I had them then. Yeah.
Connor Ellis, who's a friend of mine, he says, "Can you ask Peter if he fancies a game for the Royal William in Stowmarket on a Tuesday in the Suffolk Super League?"
This is when I retire, around about 65.
There you go, 11 years to wait. Warren Allsworth, he says, "How does he decide which set of darts to use for a particular game?"
See, it depends where you travel around the world, because the atmospheres and everything is different where you're going around the world, I believe. And other players just get on with it and play rubbish and don't win. But at least, I take different weights, different styles of darts, and that's why you see me changing on stage sometimes. They might go great in the practice room, and then you get up on stage and all the heat and everything totally changes the way the dart flies. So instead of just putting up with it, I'll try and give myself that other chance by changing.
And off the back of that, I've got to ask, I know your partner Joe takes care of your social media, but are you aware of the What Darts Is Peter Wright using now Twitter account?
No idea.
It's one of your fans. Every time you play on TV or on a stream, they'll screenshot your darts and say what they are, because we know you're someone who's always tinkered with their darts, so he or she has got quite a busy job on their hand there.
Yeah, all right, okay. No, I'll just I've only got 2 sets of these darts. There's only 2 sets of these in the world, and they're in the process of making exact same shape, a bit more grip at the front, and then just a different colour. So I just wanted a bit more grip on the back and front. So we'll see how they are. No, I haven't got them yet. I was hoping to have them before the World Series, but if not, I'll have them ready for the Grand Prix.
Well, we'll keep an eye out for them. And the last question comes from Hugo Darts 180, who says, "Do you think you are definitely back?"
I'm not definitely back yet, but it's nice to, I'm hitting a few 11 darters and stuff like that, nice 12s, that's what you need to be hitting to compete with the guys. So, yeah, it's come back slowly. It's just more it's inconsistent at the moment. So if I can get the consistency together, then I'll be happy.
Well, Peter, always great to get you on the show, always great to catch up. Congratulations on that title a few weeks ago, and wish you all the best for this weekend and the rest of 2024.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks again to Peter for joining us. Now continuing our look back at the weekend's action and over to Wigan for the Women's Series. It was the penultimate weekend of this year's Women's Series. We'll come on to Beau Greaves in a moment, but first of all, let's look to Sunday's title winners. We saw titles for Gemma Hayter and Robyn, Byrne, both picking up their second career women's series titles. But how close are these two to breaking into the elite group of players in the women's game?
I think in Gemma Hayter's case, you have to say not that far off. And, we talked about her off a few months ago now when she won her first title, which put her provisionally with the data go in the last spot for the Women's World Match Play. A poor Sunday kept her from keeping that spot, but at least put her overnight into the spot. But she's now obviously one of the favorites to get there next year, on the back of not just that title, but also a couple other good runs, a quarterfinal the previous weekend, and then 2 other last 16s this past weekend. But the reason I think she's closer is she's just playing at a much, much higher standard. So far this year, she's 4th in averages in the women's series. The only people ahead of her, Beau Greaves, Fallon Sherrick, and Noah Lynn van Leuven, the 3 of the big 5 in women's darts, depending on how, at least there's 5 people that you can certainly say are the figureheads and heads of the sport. And she's ahead of 2 of them in Lisa Ashton and Mikuru Suzuki. And I've talked about Mikuru recently. I think I thought Mikuru was finally coming into form, but she was very inconsistent this past weekend. But I do think if Mikuru finds her best game, you can add 3 to 6 points to her average, and she would be right there at or ahead of Gemma Hayter. Lisa Ashton has dropped off over the past couple years, the World Senior Championships this year aside. And I think there's a lot of reason to believe at this point Gemma Hayter overall is playing at a higher standard than Lisa Ashton. No doubt she did in the semifinals, where she averaged 15 points north of her in winning that match. But it wasn't just that. She also beat Fallon Sherrick. She also beat Mikuru Suzuki. She beat Elaine de Graaf. She beat half the people who qualified for the Women's World Match Play. I know Elaine de Graaf pulled out, but she did qualify for it. She beat half of them en route to the title. She also beat Vicky Pruim, who's one of the better players in women's darts. And then to follow it up first match in the next event and only go and beat Beau Greaves, as well as a win over a very competitive Kim Holden. What a Sunday that was. That is world class. And every single match, bar one, on that Sunday, she was above her seasonal average. The only one where she wasn't was the match against Elaine de Graaf, where she was 0.23 points below it. That is what world-class players do. They lift their game. They beat who was in front of them, sometimes beat them to a bloody pulp, like she did Beau Greaves in the 4-1. Also, Lisa Ashton, 5-0. And they do it every single match. I'm really impressed with Gemma Hayter, and I'm not going to say she's one of in the top 5 in the women's game because we haven't seen enough of her yet, and we haven't yet seen her on the big televised stage. But I've seen enough to say she's threatening to get there, and a few more performances like that, she will be there. She will join Noah Lynn van Leuven in breaking in to that crowd at the top of the game. As far as Robyn Byrne is concerned, a phenomenal run to the title. And again, also with wins over Fallon Sherrick and Lisa Ashton en route, but she didn't have to play at her best. And yes, great players win even when they're not playing at their best. But we just haven't seen as much of her being able to push her game into the 80s. There have been a few of those matches over the course of the season. She has done it 10 times this year. That's what Gemma Hayter did in a weekend. And that's the difference. I think the A game for Hayter is just so much better right now than it is for Robyn Byrne. And I think there's potential and there's a confidence and a grit about Robyn that makes her a tough opponent to play. And she has obviously shown she can win when she's not at her best. But I just don't think she's quite yet there at that elite part of the game. She's in that second tier. Players like Rhian O'Sullivan, Kirsi Vinnikainen, Lorraine Winstanley, who she beat in the finals, who on their day can beat anyone, on their day can win the title. But overall, their day just doesn't come enough And for Gemma Hayter, the day is going to come a lot more often.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And starting with Gemma Hayter so far in 2024, when you look down that roll of honour on the women's series, Beau Greaves, who we'll come on to talk about more in a moment, she leads the way with 7 titles. Then you've got 5 players that have also won multiple titles. Noah Lynn van Leuven on 3, and then Fallon Sherrock, Lisa Ashton, Mikuru Suzuki and Gemma Hayter all have 2 titles apiece. So Gemma is amongst that pool of players that have won multiple times on the women's series this year. And you mentioned the averages as well. 4th place ahead of Lisa Ashton and Mikuru Suzuki, 78.29 for the season, more than half a point ahead of Ashton, almost 3 points ahead of Suzuki, and they're multi-time world champions. So that shows you how far that she's come in a very short period of time. Like you, I want to see how she does when she gets onto the bigger stages, like the Women's World Match Play next year. We'd expect her to qualify for that next year, the way she's going. But for her first year back in competitive darts and in the limelight, it might be easy to forget, given how well she's done this year, that this time 12 months ago, Gemma Hayter, she wasn't even playing the Women's Series or going up against these top ladies players. So to get her second title on Sunday in her first season playing on the Women's Series, yes, very impressive. And you mentioned some of the games that she played on the way to winning that title. I think her lowest average from the 6 games was a 78. And the players that she beat, you mentioned there, Eileen de Graaf, Sherrock, Ashton in the semis, then Suzuki in the final, and I think dropped just 6 legs on the way to the title as well. So yeah, she's making up for lost time. And if we were to revisit this question in a year's time, the way she's going, I think we very well could be saying that she is going to be in that elite 4 to 5 best ladies players in the world. And as for Robyn, Byrne, 11th on the averages, 73.35. She caught the eye on debut at the Women's World Match Play last year, and if you'd have watched that event, you'd have expected her to have been in the field again in Blackpool this year, but she missed out. And I think maybe consistency is something that Robyn will want to improve on. She can very easily go and average in the high 70s, get that average into the 80s, but then again, she can dip into the mid 60s to the low 60s. And she really did have to dig in for that title on the Sunday. 3-1 down to Vicky Prume in the last 16, come back and won that one 4-3, and a tough run as well, beating Ashton and Sherrock in the quarterfinals in the semis. And the last event of a 4-event weekend, we saw a lot of the players' levels had dropped, but she took her chances, and in the end, 5-1, 5-2 and 5-2 in those last 3 games, quarterfinals through to the final. She won them all with some to spare. So I think I'd put her maybe in that 7 to 12 bracket of players if I had to rank them right now, but she has got a lot of potential, and I think if she can be a bit more consistent, find that more consistent level, put another few points on her average overall, then I think we're going to see her climb those rankings and be well in the race for a return to the Women's World Match Play next year.
Well, you mentioned we'll come on to Beau Greaves. A great Saturday for her, winning both titles. But then it was 2 early exits for the Women's World #1 on Sunday. Where do you see her game is right now with the Grand Slam and Lakeside approaching over the next couple of months?
Yeah, it's a super Saturday for Beau Greaves, not quite a super Sunday though. And it's an interesting one with her because she wrapped up the top spot on the Order Merit now with 4 events and 1 weekend to spare. But it was very much all or nothing for her in Wigan at the weekend. She did the clean sweep on Saturday, 12 matches played, 12 matches won, 2 titles won out of the 2 events. But on the Sunday, didn't bank any prize money, played 3 matches, won 1, lost 2. And the 1 game she did win was with a 99 average. So, yeah, it's difficult to say. But there were times on Saturday, even during those runs to the title, when she did look virtually unstoppable. There was that semi-final of the first event against Eileen de Graaf, the quarter-final of the second event, her win over Rhiannon O'Sullivan. Those were the 2 performances that stood out the most for me. But on the flip side, there were times when she was vulnerable in both those events. She missed match darts, then survived match darts against Kirsty Vinakainen in the first event. Then the second event, the final with Noah Lynn van Leuven, battling back from 3-0 and 4-2 down to win 5-4, surviving match darts there as well. So on another day, she could have come away from the weekend empty-handed if things went the other way. But there are some big tournaments coming up for Beau in the final months of the year. The Grand Slam, her second go at that. We all remember how well she performed last year on debut, coming very close to qualifying through the group stage. In the group that she had, we spoke about him earlier, Ricardo Pietreczko, Nathan Aspinall, Damon Heta. She was 1 leg away from not just qualifying, but topping that group as well. And And Beau, she's already said Lakeside is going to be her choice of World Championship again. She's going for 3 on the spin in the WDF, and the levels are there. We saw that. We saw some excellent stuff from her at times, but we also saw, as I mentioned, that vulnerability when she's not at the top of her game, and maybe that's more of a sign of the other ladies stepping up to the plate. We spoke about Gemma Hayter a moment ago. She sent Beau out of Sunday's second event, and a word for Lauren Salter as well, someone that we've not spoke about on the show before. She's emerged at the weekend, averaged 80 in beating Beau in the first event that day. So we're seeing more challenges emerge, and as for Beau, I think those defeats might serve as a bit of motivation for her to get on that practice board, get ready for the last weekend of the Women's Series events, and put a marker down again for the rest of the field to try and match her again.
Yeah, I'm not worried at all about where Beau Greaves' game is. It wasn't her best weekend, because her best weekend would be winning all 4 events. She's done that before. But it also wasn't anywhere near her worst. And okay, she had those 2 early exits on Sunday, and she didn't play at her best. But she went out to someone who won one of the events in Gemma Hayter. She didn't win that one, but she did win one of the events on Sunday. And the other match, her opponent averaged over 80 as well against her in that match. And across 15 matches over the 4 events, 7 of the 15, she was above her seasonal average, which is just under half. And okay, that means 8 of them she was under, but most of them were relatively close, within 6 points of that, so within 1 standard deviation of that. Really, the only match that she was significantly below her seasonal form was that match where she lost in her first round on Sunday afternoon to Lauren Salter, but even still averaged 74 in that. It's not really anything that I'm worried about. And you go back to the previous weekend, she also won 2, made the final the other, and went out with an 89 average to Leen de Graaf in the other event. She's been, for the most part, dominant this year in the Women's Series. She's been adding up titles in the WDF when she's gone over there, and she's been pretty decent as well in the Development Tour. She's getting back to that level of dominance, or at least the performance level of the dominance that she had a couple years ago when she first came on to the Women's Series. The big difference is there are now more players who can beat her. At that point, it was pretty much just Lisa Ashton and Fallon Sherrick who could beat her, and Lisa Ashton wasn't playing well enough, and Fallon Sherrick wasn't playing consistently enough. Mikuru Suzuki wasn't playing most of the Women's Series at that point. Now you have all them, and the people we've talked about so far over the last couple of questions. So it's just natural that she's going to lose more matches, even if she's playing well. But I want to mention, because you mentioned she could have lost in both of those events on Saturday. But I want to mention one of those matches that she could have lost, the second event on Saturday. And it was the last 16 match against Trina Gulliver, where she was 2-1 down. Oh, sorry, it was 2-2 in that match. And Beau Greaves threw in a fantastic 14 darter, and Trina Gulliver missed 4 darts to hold to force a last leg decider. In that match, Trina Gulliver averaged her highest ever average in the Women's Series, averaging 89. And the reason I want to mention that is just to mention the weekend Trina Gulliver had, a player that obviously every darts fan knows because she's a 10-time world champion, but she's not been anywhere near that player. Yeah, she won a Women's Series somehow a couple years ago, but that was more of a fluke than anything else. That shows the fighting spirit that she has as a world champion, but she didn't play like someone who would be a champion that day. It just happened to fall into her lap, and she took it, like she took her 10th world title without playing her best, like she took her last World Masters without playing her best. As I said, that's what champions can do. They win even when they're not at their best. But Trina Gulliver, I won't say she was at her best, but she was at her best that we've seen for some time, and it's worth mentioning because of that. Across 11 matches, 10 of those 11, she was above her seasonal average in the Women's Series this year. Only once was she below it, and that match she didn't have to play well. Her opponent averaged 48. Okay, she went 30-19, 17-39 to win that match, but take away that 39 darter in the last leg, she was also above her seasonal average in a match that she really wasn't under threat. She had her highest ever average in the Women's Series, and the 4 people who beat her across the 4 events were Fallon Sherrick, Beau Greaves, Noah Lynn van Leuven, and Fallon Sherrick. Not a bad weekend to have. to play by far the best darts you've ever played in the women's series, and to only be able to be beaten by the 3 best players right now in women's darts. Maybe there's something left in the golden girl, even as she enters her golden years. I think it's worth mentioning on the show, even though the question didn't say it, because I was impressed with those performances by the 10-time world champion.
Definitely deserves a mention. Well, that's our roundup of the weekend's action. We're going to be back in a moment to look ahead to this weekend's action, the World Series of Darts finals. But before we do, let's bring in our final guest on this week's show, a player who's going to be making his debut in the World Series of Darts finals this weekend. He is one of the new tour card holders for 2024. Here's our chat with Rhys Griffin.
I'm delighted to say we're joined by one of the debutants in this year's World Series of Darts finals, Rhys Griffin. Thanks for the time, Rhys. How you doing?
No problem, mate. Good. I'm good.
It's a long time coming, getting you on the podcast. We've known each other for over a year now, but a great time to get you on because it's just around the corner, the World Series, your TV debut. How are you feeling as we get closer to Amsterdam?
Yeah, I'm good. It's a little nervous, so I don't know what to expect yet. I don't know how the crowd are going to be in. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's like you say, it's a long time coming since I got on the stage, so.
And we'll come back to the World Series later, but lots to chat to you about. Let's go right back to the very beginning for you in darts, your earliest memories. How did you get into the game?
My mum used to play on a Tuesday night, and she used to, her team used to pay me to come and mark the games for them, so I helped my maths, and then it's like and then I get to practice in between the games, or when they were having a food break. I just kept practicing in between. Then my mum put a board up at home for me. Then I started playing against my dad until I was too good for him, and he stopped playing against me. He refused to play against me. But yeah, and then I just got taken to, I think it was British Open. Maybe it was in, where was it? Breen Sands, British International Open. And when I think I was about 9, and I got scouted to play for Glamorgan Youth, and then I just got up in levels then, just pub level, youth level, pub level, Super League. They just went from there.
Yeah, it's been pretty much full-on darts for you since then. I was looking, you were representing Wales as a teenager, winning the British Internationals as well. What was it like putting on that Wales shirt?
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, it was a really proud moment for me when I did that. I still had a big dream for me to do it as a men's international now. Is one of the things on my list. Yeah, there's nothing like playing for your country. Honestly, it's the passion, especially with Wales. You see the passion from Gezi and Johnny when they're playing and they put their Welsh shirts on. It's amazing.
Fingers crossed you'll get there one day.
Hopefully.
And that year as well, you played the PDC Youth Tour, what is now the Development Tour as a youngster. What was your first experience like playing in that PDC setup?
It was weird, because you go from where I used to play on the sort of what was the BDO youth back then, and Welsh youth and all that stuff, and I was pretty much one of the top dogs. Then you go to that and you see Michael Smith and Van Gogh and Joe Cullen, and you see all these names, Ricky Evans and all them like that, and it was a big eye opener at that age just to witness it. But it was good though. It made me want to get better at the game.
You talk about playing the big boys. A couple of years later, you were with them again, the UK Open. You won the Riley's qualifiers. I think 17 years old, pretty young. What was that experience like, getting to play in a major?
Oh man, that was a brutal day. That was the qualifier. I think the day I qualified, my nan passed away, so it was a massive thing for me that day. I think I finished playing, and then I got in the car. My mum and brother were coming, and they weren't excited. I was like, "What's happening?" My nan had passed. I was like, "Oh my god!" But yeah, you go down there and I said stayed with Jamie and Dean Reynolds and everyone that weekend, and it was phenomenal. That was a big buzz playing in that at that age. And I got beat Paul Whitworth 5-0 first time, and he said he was going to smash me, so that was great.
Well, a few big runs follow after that in the youth setup. I think the WDF Europe Youth Cup, you got to the final of that, final on the development tour. At that time, are you thinking, I'm on the path to be a professional? Yeah, I wasn't
really thinking about the tour much back then. I was more focused on going to Lakeside and trying to qualify for Lakeside and doing it the BDO way and try and earn my stripes that way and then get on the tour. But yeah, I knew I had it. It was just I just couldn't get over the line in finals. It was starting to do my head in at a point. But the people I was playing against, you see the finals. I lost to Dimitri in that final. I think Colin rolled off, so you don't really hear anymore. But his brother's on the tour now, and Colin was an unbelievable player. Like, you were always surrounded, wherever you went, you were surrounded by amazing youngsters. There was just as good, or if not better. And I think that's what I needed at that point, was to lose a few times to get a bit of hunger. But yeah, the Lakeside route was the original plan.
Well, you got to another development tour final after that. Again, it was Dimitri van der Berg, 5-4, but you did beat a certain Luke Humphreys on the way, and we see the likes of them now. They're right at the top of the game. What do you think when you see them at there? Because you were rubbing shoulders with them for a long time.
It's weird, right? Because if you go back to about a year ago or 2 years ago, and I wasn't really playing much, I sort of gave up and everything. You were watching Dimitri and Luke, and I knew I was as good as them back in the day, if not a bit better, but that sort of fights your hunger back. That sort of set my spark back to get me back playing again. And you look at what Dimitri's gone on to do, and Luke's world champ, and God knows how many majors he's going to win, and or has already won. But yeah, you go back to the old days and you reminisce about it, but it's a weird one, because you're happy for him, but you're thinking, that could have been me. That could have just one little win that could have just turned my tails a little bit. But yeah, I'm happy for everyone that's done well.
Well, one event I've got to ask about as well is, I only found out about this today, the Dutch Open, getting to the semi-finals of that in 2017. Yeah. I've always wanted to go. It looks like such a great weekend. Thousands of entries. Just talk to me about that.
Mate, I've been twice, and the Dutch Open is one of the maddest weekends ever, right? You have to walk through a party tent where there's about 1,000 people raving their heads off, drinks flying everywhere, just to get to your board as a shortcut. Because if you go through the main entrance, it takes you have to leave about half hour before your game just to get to registration. It's mental. That is my favourite event ever. When I got to the semi-finals that year, I don't really remember much. I'll be honest with you, I don't really remember much of the event or playing in the semi-finals. I remember I lost to McGeaney because I was under the same management as him at the time, with Sue and Steve Cusick. But yeah, that's an event everyone should be going to the Dutch Open and experiencing that, because that is one of my favourite events ever.
Good times. And you mentioned about taking a break away from the game. When I first met you, you were still playing local darts, but you weren't playing the PDC setup. So why did you take that break away from the game?
I felt I was going to darts for the wrong reasons. I didn't feel my head wasn't right. My missus was in a lot of trouble at the time, with pains, and she had a lot of things going on. My mind was never there. It was always at home. And I went to a challenge tour weekend the one time, and I was just awful. I just didn't want to be there at all, and I said that weekend I couldn't do it anymore. I had to take a break. I had to get my family life sorted. Me and my missus moved into our house and just get us set up before I come back. But yeah, it was the best thing I ever did. I spoke to Ross Smith about it, because he took a break before he had his massive break in darts, and he said it probably wouldn't be the right thing to do. So I listened for probably the first time ever, and it was the right decision, because I come back, and when you've talked to a lot of dart players, if there's stuff going on at home or people ain't right, things ain't right in their personal life, darts is the worst thing for you. Honestly, is you just don't want to be there. But yeah, it was a good decision in the long run, I think.
Well, looks like you're enjoying your darts now. We've got to mention your Thursday team, or they're going to tell me off. The Crofters, Simon Isherwood. He's gave me a few questions. He wants to know who's the best captain / gaffer you've had in darts.
There's a bloke called Mark Dacey who used to run our Super League team. He was an unbelievable motivator for me personally. He sort of got me into the Super League route and the county setup through that. He always fought for me in every prospect of the game when I was going through the ranks. He was always behind me all the way. So I'd probably say Mark. I know Si's not going to be happy about that, but yeah, he was a big part of my darts early chapter, and I can't thank him enough for everything he did.
We'll have Simon at a second.
Yeah, he's not going to be happy. Yeah.
And his other question he wanted to ask you was, if you could steal anyone else's throwing action, whose would you have?
Don't know, everyone says I've got a nice throw. I don't see it. I don't think it's snatchy, but everyone says I've got a nice throw. It's got a nice throw in darts. Luke Humphreys is lovely. Little is flawless. Tell you what I'll go with, because I think she's phenomenal. Beau Greaves. I think her throw is amazing. I just don't see anything wrong with it ever. When she's on it, it's ridiculous.
Good shout. And I've been to a few of your games at the Crofters this season. You've got a very strong squad of players. Lisa Ashton part of the team now as well. But put you and Lisa aside, who's the best player in the team?
Don't do that to me. That's a horrible question. They're going to be fuming. Luna. I'd say who's got the highest ceiling, I'd probably say Nath. But yeah, I'd probably say Nath. I'm just going to play it safe there, not try and annoy anyone, because I got a sponsored place at my team as well. Yeah, I'll say Nath.
Good answer.
Cromie, yeah.
Well, I mentioned Lisa as well, your future mother-in-law.
Yeah.
You're engaged to her daughter Danielle. I'm guessing she was one of the reasons that you made the move from Wales to Bolton as well.
Yeah, I think it's 10 years we've been together now, so 7.5 years ago. Yeah, moved up with Dan. Lisa took me in. Just give me a load of guidance towards the game as well, because you ask anyone at a younger age, I had a lot of anger built up. I was a really angry, nasty person when I was younger. But yeah, she sort of took that out of the game. I think that's when my standard got even higher. When you learn to control your anger and use it right, then yeah, she did a lot in that aspect of the game for me.
Good to hear, and we'll get back to your darts in a second, but I know there's a few headline names signed up for your stag do. Is there room for one more?
Why you? Still waiting for him. Have they not put you in the group?
No,
I've told them.
Still waiting.
I'll get tricky to do it today.
Good man.
I'll get it sorted.
Well, let's get back to your darts then,
ridiculous.
because you had the Modus Super Series last year, I think around August, September time. I remember here at Darts Corner, walking past the canteen, it was full. I was going, what's going on in there? They're all watching your game on the TV. Yeah. But how much did you take away from that week being in front of the cameras?
Yeah, it was. I thought I was going to be a lot more nervous than I was. I think I got to the Saturday and there wasn't even many people. There must have been about 50, 60 people. I got really nervous. But the setup down there is amazing. They make you feel it's perfect. As in, for what it is, it's amazing. But yeah, I've never really been frightened on stage. Like cameras and stuff, like, it don't really affect me. I might jinx myself here, but it never really has affected me in the past. So I'm hoping it stays the same in a week's time. But yeah, that down there is different, because you go from playing all week where there's no one, it's just you, the marker, and your opponent, and you can just sort of do your own thing. But the crowd behind you, if they're giving you some stick, you hear everything in that room, and it's brilliant. You got one person just annoying you. You can see them and you can hear them doing it behind. You can hear them, feel their eyes in the back of your head. But yeah, the Modus doing amazing things down there, and I can't thank them enough and the ADC enough, because they give me that platform to sort of realise how good my game actually was when I came back end of last year. So yeah, they were a massive part of me coming back as well.
I'm guessing it was playing in those events as well, the ADC, the Modus. That's probably what pushed you on to go to Q School this year.
Yeah, well, the original plan was I wasn't going to go Q School. I was just going to sort of do the ADC stuff. But when I won the ADC event, I played really well all day. I think I'd won average below 94, and I was really good all day. And I thought, if I can do that here, I can do that at Q School. I might be able to push it. I played really well at Modus until the Saturday, so I thought I might as well just give it a go. I only went to sort of build back for the Challenge Tour the year after, because I wasn't expecting anything of myself that week. But yeah, the one time I don't expect to get a tour card, I get a tour card, it sort of puts life back. I've been smoked because it was mental. But yeah, the ADC stuff's they were a good build back into darts for me.
Good stuff. Well, just looking at that Q School campaign, you come through the first stage on the final day, win through outright. The third day of the final stage, a great run, getting to the semi-finals. Yeah. How were you feeling when you went to bed that night? Because you were close to a tour card, but you were still in a good position on the order.
I knew 6 points would be enough. I'd heard 6 points would be enough. I'm on 5. I had a really good leg difference, because the games I was playing really well, and I was winning 5-0, 5-1, and I was doing it a lot. So all I was hoping for was just a draw where it was either someone that needed the same as me or lower. If you didn't want to draw one of them top guys, they knew already had it because they had nothing to lose, and I ended up playing Matty Dennett, who had nothing to lose. But luckily we both got a tour card in the end. It was. I didn't sleep much that night, I'm not gonna lie. And
what was, when you lost to Matty Dennett 6-5? What was that weight like? To find
cried my eyes out for about 6 hours. I thought I'd blown it. Yeah, I was uncontrollable. Thought that was probably the best chance I've ever had to get a tour card, and I think I missed a dart to win. Then missed 2 darts to win actually, and I was inconsolable for about 6 hours until I heard the news that I'd actually got it, and I was inconsolable then again because I was so happy. I went through a roller coaster of emotions that day.
Well, yeah, you got your tour card. It was good to see. And this year we've seen all the Players' Championships move to midweek. So what's that been like for you, juggling work and darts?
With the job I've got now, it's not too bad because I work off shifts anyway. So I work weekends. I'll just work weekends if I'm away on the tour. But my work have been really good with me, considering the amount of time I've had off this year. They've been really understanding, and they've helped out a lot. If I've come back from a Pro Tour weekend and I'm just not available, if I'm not feeling up to work the next day, I can usually just give them a ring and they'll just give me the day off, which is nice. But yeah, when you're not winning on the Pro Tour, it's financially it is. But yeah, work will be good.
Yeah, well, you've started to pick up some results we've seen at the back end of the season. You had that run to the last 16 a few weeks ago. Luke Littler just ending that run in the end. But as we come into September now, how do you reflect on this first year?
I think it's been steady. I don't think I've done anything mind-blowing. I think I've had 1 or 2 good runs. I've beat a couple of good players. It's consistency for me. Like you said, with the work life, it's hard to balance both of them. So you find I'm going to a lot of these Pro Tours. I'm tired from working the 7 days beforehand because I'm away for 5 days when I'm going to Germany and stuff like that. I think I can there's something to build on, which is a good thing. I think my scoring's been really good, my finishing has been great all year until I qualify for the World Series. They're probably the best I've done all year. But yeah, it's just finding that right balance of work and darts. When I find that, I think my darts will improve a lot, and I think I'll get a lot better results then as well.
Well, you mentioned the World Series. You know I've been in your ear all year to qualify for a Euro Tour. Just before you went, you said Prague or Amsterdam. I said we'll have both. You lost the Prague qualifier. So how determined were you to get that one in Amsterdam?
After that, do you know what it was? I was trying. I just wanted 1 or 2 this year. When the year started, I said I'll take 2 or 3 Euro Tours if I can get to them. When I didn't get to any of them, I was devastated. I thought I played really well in that Prague qualifier as well. I thought I played really well in a lot of the qualifiers this year. People have just been playing a bit better, but I was really determined. I think after I beat Ratajski, I sort of knew that this was going to be a good chance. I started seeing the draw. It was all working out for me. People were beating people that I didn't really want to play. Well, not didn't want to play, but you'd rather play the other person. It sort of just worked out fine. People were missing doubles when I needed them to, and yeah, I told you I gave you a trip this year. I told you Amsterdam will be a nice one anyway. You've never been.
Yeah, the most expensive one, but I'm happy to go there.
It could have been worse. We could have gone in Lausanne.
Yeah, true. Well, I mean, you mentioned the game against Christoph Ratajski, a 120 finish to get over the line when he was coming back. The next game, Darren Beveridge, a 92 finish in the decider. You're into that final round when it's all to play for. How are you feeling going into that last game?
Absolutely crap at it. Yeah, it's a nervous wreck. I don't think I calmed down until I went. I had 4-1 up. I think, if I'm right, I think I was 4-1 up and I relaxed. But yeah, until that, I was lucky because he wasn't hitting anything. And I just thought if you don't beat him while he's not hitting anything, then you get off the tour. Because if you can't beat people when they're not playing well, you need to give it up. And luckily for me, he wasn't very good, and he'll tell you that himself. Richard, I've known Richard a long time. He's a quality player. But yeah, I hurt him big in that game as well. I hit 160 when he was sat on 2 Dara, 128 when he was sat on tops. And I can hear him muttering things behind me in Dutch. He probably weren't happy about it, but luckily I got the rub of the green that day, so yeah, happy for me.
Yeah, we're delighted to see it happen, and it's only been 2 weeks since the qualifiers. The World Series finals coming up next week. It's a quick turnaround, but who have you got making the trip to Amsterdam?
I've got you. You're coming over with Crommy, Nick from Crompton. 2 of the mates coming over. The fiance Danielle's coming over. Danny, my manager's coming over. I think one or 2 of my brothers might be making the trip over, and a few of their mates were on about coming, so we might have a bit of a Welsh crowd coming in over as well. That'd be nice in Amsterdam.
Good squad. Well, behind the scenes, you signed up with the Darts Manufacturer Mission. We should give them a mention. Yeah. How much of a help have they been so far? Yeah, they've been massive. Gary's great. He's always at the events. He's got some good words to say, you know, especially when you're losing. You know, he never gives up on any of his players, which is good. Yeah, they're a great company. They've made fantastic darts for me, which I love. The shirts are stunning. I love the way they've done the shirts and everything. So yeah, I can't thank them enough for what they're doing. 2 more lastly, circling back to the World Series. 2 important things for every player when they're making their TV debut. The first one is the nickname. You've had a few over the years. Yeah. Happy Gilmore, RPG. R1 was the
I don't know how to pronounce it, but library member, Clanbraddock or something. But what are you? What have you decided to go for?
I don't know. Yeah, I haven't made my mind up. I don't know. There's been a few good ones over the year. The Woolly Warrior stands out from James Adjar. That one's a good one. I don't know. Yeah, we're going to sit down with my manager tomorrow. We're going to go over a few things and see what. I can't go to Amsterdam and have RPG. They just ripped me out of MVG, wouldn't they? They just ripped the shit out of me. So I don't think I'll be going with that.
We'll keep an eye out for the nickname. And finally, then the walk-on song.
Yeah, I haven't got that yet either.
No decision.
I've got a few in mind. We've got a list. I think we're going to go through it all tomorrow and see, because I've got a walk on. It's Good Charlotte by the Anthem, but everyone reckons I should get something more upbeat for Holland, for Amsterdam, because they love all the techno and everything over there, don't they? So I might have to think of something else, try and get them on side for a game or two.
I'd have just gone with a bit of Tom Jones, mate. You're from Wales, so have a bit of a sing song.
I know. The other one, I'll get Wales. When I get to the Premier League in Cardiff, I'll have a bit of Tom Jones. If I ever make it that far.
Good man. Well, Rhys, it's a pleasure to sit down and chat with you. Congratulations on qualifying for the World Series. Can't wait to see your game out there, and wish you all the best for the rest of the year.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again to Rhys for joining us. Now looking ahead to the World Series of Darts finals. The World Series wraps up for 2024 with the finals in Amsterdam this weekend, and there's some tasty looking first round ties. So what is catching your eye from the draw?
Yeah, and I would assume most of our listeners know the format by now, but just in case you weren't paying attention, this is now the first year that it's gone to a full bracket of 32 after being 24 for the past while. So as opposed to last year where the top 8 seeds on the World Series Order of Merit had a bye, they're now entering the first round. So that means you have right off the bat Luke Littler playing Ross Smith. You have Gerwyn Price playing Cameron Menzies. You have even Peter Wright off of his Euro Tour title going against Dave Chisnall off of his Euro Tour title. So you're seeing the players who 12 months ago would get to spend the first night watching everything, having to come from the beginning and play. And that creates those 3 ties that I just mentioned. And I want to see all of them. Ross Smith, he's won a European Championship, somehow hasn't won on the Euro Tour yet, but he looks a player who it would not surprise me to see him pick up another, whether it's a Euro Tour or major title sometime soon, because he has that ability to just get in form for a couple days, and that's all you need to do to win one of those weekend tournaments. Luke Littler, of course, is only the Premier League champion and world runner-up. Peter Wright, Dave Chisnall, off those Euro Tours, I want to see that one. Gerwyn Price, Cameron Menzies, I will talk about that match again. That's another one that I'm really looking forward to and jumps off the page at me, because Cameron Menzies right now looks the best player who hasn't won an event, and won any event, that is, and Gerwyn Price looks like he's getting back towards his best. But I'll say one more match before I leave you to pick up the scraps, because there's a lot of good scraps here, and that's Michael van Gerwen against Johnny Clayton. MVG is not the player he once was. He hasn't won an event since January. And Johnny Clayton, okay, it looks like he's getting back, but he's not the player that won 4 televised events a few years ago. But when they go against each other on the big stage, it's very often one of the matches of the year. There's been so many times where they both averaged 106. Maybe that's just what they need. That chance, first round, to play one another, to get back and just have a little bit of fun and put on an exhibition. And that's what this event is. It's not a ranking event. It's just an exhibition. And maybe we'll see those fireworks from 2 of the game's greats.
Some good picks there. And I think that is a very good point, actually, you made about the number of players in this field going from 24 to 32. It does feel like, looking at that draw on paper, it's a much more exciting event, because I was going to start this by saying that for Sexy September, as you've dubbed it, this month, it does mark the start of the peak dart season when we come into the final few months of the year, stacked with events, races to qualify for some of the biggest events. They reach their conclusion. There's a lot on the line. The World Series of Darts finals probably doesn't quite hit the mark in terms of Sexy September. It's not the sexiest of the TV events that the PDC put on each year. And I shouldn't be saying that really, because I'm going to be flying to Amsterdam Friday morning to go and watch it. But there are more prestigious events on the calendar, we know that, and they are coming up very soon. But I think going up to 32 players has made this event a little bit more exciting. And looking at that draw bracket, there's a few games that you mentioned I had down here as well, and I'll pick one game from each quarter of the draw, working from the bottom upwards, and I've got to start with Wessel Nyman against Nathan Aspinall. I think that is a pick 'em with the bookies at the moment, partly down to Aspinall's absence through injury since the World Match Play, but I think a lot you've got to give credit to Nyman. 2024, he recently got to a Pro Tour final. He's top of the development tour. He's had a great year. He's flying at the moment, and the next quarter, the third quarter, for me personally, I could make a case for all four of those ties, but you mentioned it, Gerwyn Price and Cameron Menzies. Again, Menzies another standout player away from the TV cameras in recent months. We spoke about him on the show the last few weeks as one of the next potential first-time title winners in the PDC. It's probably long odds for it to happen in Amsterdam this weekend, as he has got Gerwyn Price first up. But if you price, you're thinking that's not the kindest of first-round draws, and especially in a short race to 6 legs, a very tough one. And second quarter, again, a few games I could pick here. I'll go with the one that you had, though, Michael van Gerwen, Johnny Clayton, and I think a quick head count, there's 7 Dutchmen in this field, so there's a lot of homecomings here, a lot of players for the home crowd to get behind this weekend, and I expect it to be a packed out crowd for this event. I think Saturday night's a sellout. I think Friday night, Saturday afternoon are selling pretty well as well. And Van Gerwen, he had that surprise exit to Gabriel Clemens at the weekend on the Euro Tour. This is a first round tie between 2 former winners of the World Series finals. Van Gerwen, he is the defending champion, and it's the only quote unquote major that he holds right now. So he's going to be desperate to keep hold of it. And then just lastly, another tie that you mentioned, Luke Littler, the top seed against Ross Smith. That has got the makings of a very entertaining first round game. 2 high scorers, both capable of big finishes as well. I'm expecting a lot of 180s in that one.
We have one more question before we go. It is, of course, our parlay. I already know your picks. I also know our sponsors' picks, but you don't know mine yet. But I'll give you the chance to go first to pick those 2 winners from the first round games.
Yes, it is time for the Weekly Dartscast Parlay back. I think the first time we've done this since the World Match Play, but we're going to be doing plenty of these during the rest of the year. And the current standings, Jack, from our sponsors, Kwiff, he is 3-1. He's got 3 right, 1 wrong. Me and you, Burton, we're tied 2 each, 2 right, 2 wrong. And you did certainly make up for Matthew Kinn and dodgy picks in the World Cup for you, because you did go 2-0 at the World Match Play. So me and you both on level terms. My picks, though, we mentioned it on the show earlier about the heart rule in the head, and that's what I've gone down for this route. I've gone with the mission double. I've gone with Rhys Griffin and Wessel Nyman, and as you guys know, I do a little bit of written work on the mission socials and the website, so I'm going to back the mission boys here. Wessel, just spoke about him a moment ago. He's in some great form, and what a moment it's going to be for him to play in front of a home crowd in Amsterdam this weekend. And Nathan Aspinall, we've not seen him since the World Match Play. We don't know what form he's going to be in, but I'm hoping he's going to be back to fitness, and we are going to see both players at their best. But for my picks, I'm going to go with the debutant Wessel Nyman to get the win. And my other pick, I'm going to have to be loyal here. I think Rhys is the slight underdog with the bookies, so there is some value there. He is going to be giving up a lot of experience, you'd say, to Jeff Smith, who's got a lot more stage time. He's been in multiple World Championships. He's made the final at Lakeside. He was in the US Darts Masters final last year on the World Series, and he only lost his tour card at the end of last year. But Rhys is the one with the tour card right now. He's in his first year on the tour. He'll have banked an awful lot of experience over the last 6 to 7 months, and I'm hoping that is going to count for a lot here when he makes his big stage debut. And he is the reason that I'm going to be in Amsterdam, so hopefully he's going to get me a win to celebrate on the Saturday afternoon as well.
Well, being that you picked that match, I can't. If I picked Jeff Smith, it would guarantee that our ACA would lose. So I'm not going to do that, even though I do. Sorry to tell you, I think Jeff's going to win that match. He's going to silence our ACA if things go the way I think they'll go, and of course they always do. But I'll pick 2 matches. I'm going to pick one, like I did, I think, for the match play, one favorite, one that's a bit more of an upset. I'm going to go Michael Smith over Jose de Sousa. We haven't seen as much from Michael Smith as of late, and as a result, he's actually in danger of not qualifying for the European Championships. All he really has to do is show up to any of the last 3 and win 1 match, and that'll be job done. But he needs to do that first to make sure that he gets there. But Jose de Sousa has really fallen down and did a great job coming through the tour card qualifier to get into this field. But that came pretty much out of nowhere, and he still has work to do just to get to the World Championships. Things have really fallen for the former Grand Slam champion and a former Premier League star. So I'm going to go Michael Smith in that one. But I'm going to go for one upset. I did hint at this in the last question because I said I'll come back to the Gerwyn Price-Cameron Menzies match. So I'll come back to it. I think Cameron Menzies wins this match. I don't care what we see from Gerwyn Price. There is a maturity that Cameron Menzies has never had before. And by that, I mean a belief in his game, a belief in himself, and a belief that even when adversity comes, and Gerwyn Price, if there's one thing he can do, he can throw some adversity at you. Cameron Menzies knows he has the game to find his way back. And I think this match goes to a last leg decider. But right now, I think Cameron Menzies is the stronger player. I think he gets through that last leg decider. I think he gets one of his bigger wins and moves on in this. So I'm going Cameron Menzies as my second pick. Because I believe it's going to happen.
Those are our picks, but let's get Jack's picks and we'll get the overall odds for our weekly Dartscast parlay and any other tips that he fancies for the World Series finals this weekend. So here's our chat with Jack.
Well, it's great to welcome back Jack from Kwiff ahead of the World Series of Darts finals. Thanks for the continued support as always, Jack, and we have got the weekly Dartscast parlay back for this weekend. We've picked out 2 picks each. Burton has gone with Michael Smith and Cameron Menzies. I've gone with Rhys Griffin and Wessel Nyman. Jack, let us know who your 2 picks are to win in the first round and what the odds are looking like if people want to put that together as a sixfold.
The boys at Harrows can pay me later, but I've got 2 of their quartet of darting superstars. Damon Hayter, I wasn't probably overly familiar with Damon 12 months ago, apart from that glorious handlebar moustache looking at his best David Boone impression, but I think he's been a revelation this year on tour. Very consistent. Shown a lot of bottle in, with some big darts. I think he's a good price to beat Gabriel Clemens. I know Gabriel had a bit of an upset knocking out Michael van Gerwen in the Euro Tour of the weekend, but I do think Damon's is a fair price around the 4-9, 1-2 mark. And again, I kind of have to back our man Dave Chisnall. Again, Dave's ranked up 25 consecutive weeks on the Kwiff blog and won his second Euro Tour event of the season in Antwerp last week. He's having a great year, Dave. I do think he'll beat Peter Wright. He lost to Peter 2 weeks ago in the Euro Tour 9. I thought was a little bit unlucky. He missed 6 starts to go. I think 3-1 up in the 4th leg. Made amends last week, admittedly quite fortunate. Should have been 5-2 down. Ended up winning 6-5 with a great 87 finish on the bullseye. And for me, Dave Chisnall around the 4-5, 8-11 mark. Him and Damon Hayter both to win their respective first round matches. With yourselves, if we had Michael Smith, 2-7, Cameron Menzies, who is an underdog against Gerwyn Price, around the 11-8, 5-4 mark. Rhys Griffin to beat Jeff Smith, and Wessel Nyman to beat the struggling Nathan Aspinall. But the 6 of them together, nice price, 25-1 with us at Kwiff, and there's also the chance that it could be supercharged. So 25-1 for the weekly Dartscast parlay. I think it's a fair price myself.
Very nice. And just looking ahead to this event, it's got a lot of big names involved. We've got Luke Littler, the top seed, Luke Humphries, the world champion, Michael van Gerwen, the defending champion of the World Series finals. But any other outrights, anything that takes your fancy this weekend?
Yeah, well, I think it was a big tournament for Peters to win the weekend before last in Hildesheim. I think he's been dogged by low confidence and terrible Premier League start. So if he could get back, the winner of that Peter Wright Dave Chisnall game will not be 20-1 after they get through that and move on to Saturday evening, Sunday afternoon. So I think the pair of them are probably too big at 20-1. I wouldn't be touching Michael van Gerwen around that 7-1 mark. And again, if you probably want the value bet, I do think Luke Humphries stands head and shoulders as the kind of the benchmark of professional darts at the minute. He's 3-1. He's the favourite, but he will need a monumental performance, a bit like we saw from Pikachu this week in Belgium, to get past him. Luke said before, he's very pragmatic. I will lose games. I'm not robotic. I am a human being. But Luke Humphries to me around the 3-1 mark. He's a very solid favourite. But again, I'm a little bit biased. So before I spoke to Roger earlier, Chizzy is in rare form at present. If you look at his 3 most recent Euro Tour events, I know he's the king of the Euro Tour, winner, semi-finalist and a winner. He's still to get that TV title. Fingers crossed he can bring home the bacon this weekend in Amsterdam.
Yeah, we'll see if he can be the King of Amsterdam. Jack, it's always great to get you on the show. Thanks for your support from Kwiff, and if our listeners want to get involved, download the Kwiff app or use the Kwiff website if you fancy a flutter on the darts this weekend. And with Kwiff, as you mentioned, a chance to supercharge your odds. And we've got to mention as well, 18 plus, T's and C's apply. Please gamble responsibly, and begambleaware.org. And Jack will bring you back in for the World Grand Prix. Plenty of darts coming up on our screens over the next few months, and we'll see how we get on with our weekly Dartscast Parlay this weekend.
Yeah, I had the unfortunate pleasure of spending 10 days at the City West when I was looking after Unibet's dart sponsorship. That Grand Prix is brutal. So I don't know if you're going to cover it yourself, lads. I'd avoid it. It is a tough gig. But yeah, looking forward to the Grand Prix. It's a really busy time for professional darts players. The next 2 months really, with Pro Tour, Euro Tour, and big events coming thick and fast in the build-up to the Worlds. But yeah, looking forward to it. Listen to you guys every week. I think you do a brilliant job. Was a Kwiff, proud to be associated with yourselves, and yeah, keep up the good work, lads. It's great stuff.
Anything else for this week?
Well, just a few things. Got to say thank you to our guests for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors, to Darts Corner, Condor Darts and Kwiff, for their continued support. Links in the description. Do go and check them out. Thank you to everyone for listening. Just a few more days before the World Series finals. I can't wait to be there in Amsterdam. First time going to the Netherlands, the birthplace of the GOAT in darts, coast on pay. Early flight Friday morning. So if any of our listeners are going to the darts or they're in Amsterdam, do drop us a message. I'll come and say hello. And if you've got any suggestions on places to visit, aside from the darts arena I'm going to be spending a lot of the weekend, then do please hit me up as well. But until then, I'll be back next week, touch wood, to talk all about my trip and Rhys Griffin winning the World Series of Darts finals on debut. But until then, only one thing left to do, and that is to enjoy the darts.
That's really all you have to do. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next week to recap the World Series finals, to look ahead to the next few Euro Tours and the cutoff for the World Grand Prix, which is just around the corner. A lot of players right there on the cusp for Leicester. We didn't talk about it this week, but there were about, I think, 8 of them that were in the race, or 9 of them that were really in the race, that were at the Euro Tour in Antwerp this past weekend, and they all won their first round match. So it's really hotting up there. A lot to talk about, but you'll have to hang tight for that, and you'll have to enjoy the darts in the meantime.